This week, I'm building a coffee table for this funky, eclectic room in my house that's got this very mid-century modern vibe. So that's what I'm gonna do on this coffee table. It's gonna have a very mid-century modern style aesthetic, but then blend that with some more contemporary techniques like doing wood slabs and epoxy. It's gonna be a lot of fun and we're gonna get crazy. Speaking of epoxy, I'm very excited to try Total Boat's new super deep pour, thick set Fathom. You can pour this up to 3 inches. Now right here, I've already got these cypress cookies all ready to go into that epoxy mold, but let's rewind a little bit and see how I got to this point. First up, I want to make a template to lay out the cypress cookies that represent the rectangle that I'll use for the entire epoxy pour, and that oval that I'll cut from that pour to be the final shape of this coffee table. And this just kind of gives me an idea of what I'm working with. Now, I picked up these cypress cookies from my friends over at Vintage Reclaimed Lumber and instantly was drawn to these organic shapes and curves of the outlines of these cookie slabs. Of course, if you're ever in Oklahoma City, make sure to check them out. After I cut the cookies into smaller fragments, I could lay out all the pieces into that rectangle frame that is 52 inches by 24 and find an overall pattern that I like best. All right, let's take a minute real quick to thank this video sponsor. See if you can guess exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of a video game. It's got global player versus player, over 600 champions. That's right, I'm talking about Raid Shadow Legends. And use that link down below to download Raid Shadow Legends for yourself to your mobile phone or PC. So if you've heard of Raid Shadow Legends, you know it's got tons of champions, but it's also got this insane variety of bosses as well. And real quick, we're gonna throw a spotlight on one of those guys, and I'm talking about the Guardian of the Void Keep, Malek Kavar. Now this dude, whoo, man, he looks mad. This guy went off to master the magic of the Void, and now we have all these awesome Void potions to enhance our champions with. Let's say if I'm sitting on a porcelain chair and I've got nothing else to do, I'm gonna bust out Raid Shadow Legends and jump in the arena and play some of those player versus player battles. The other thing I really love about the game is the graphics. I mean, it's just an absolutely beautiful game. All right, so what's new in Raid? This month, Raid's got a non-stop schedule of special events and activities, including an absolutely jam-packed Halloween lineup towards the end of the month. We're talking big rewards, tournaments against other players, special fragment events to get some brand new legendary champions, including one very spooky Halloween champion. Raid is bigger and busier and better than it's ever been, and it's got some really amazing updates coming very, very soon, so there's never been a better time to download the game and start playing. If you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is hit the link in the description or scan my QR code and you'll get an epic hero Chinuro, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in the game. All this treasure is going to be waiting for you in the game when you click right here. Come find me, Johnny Builds, and if you're good enough, maybe we'll start a clan. All right, y'all, it's that easy. Just click the link in the description and I'll see you in the game. Thanks to Raid Shadow Legends for supporting my channel. Okay, now back to the build, and I've got all those pieces laid out, numbered, and cut to fit into the form. You can also see where I use the oval template to draw out roughly what that final table will look like. Most of the slabs were around 2 inches, but a couple were over 3 inches thick, so I had to resaw those over on the bandsaw before placing those into the form. A couple of these cookies are going to sit in the middle of the form to fill some of that empty space, so I had to cut in a fake live edge to make it all look consistent. Now, this would have been so much easier had I switched to a smaller blade, but this resaw blade is so dialed in, I didn't want to mess it up. Okay, getting ready for that pour, and I'm using my Rockler silicone mats to protect my workbench. On a deep epoxy pour like this, it's really important to make sure that any trapped air in the slabs doesn't bubble out while it cures, and that would leave bubbles in that final pour. Now to solve this, I'm gonna brush on a layer of Total Boat high performance epoxy to seal the edges as well as the top of the cookies to also prevent staining from the white epoxy. And now over to the epoxy form, which I made on the CNC. I'm guessing some of y'all are probably wondering, why does he need a CNC to create an epoxy mold? And the fact is, you don't. I do like, however, how accurate this mold is gonna be, how easy it is, how much faster, and that's really why I wanted this machine, so I can create more efficiencies in my shop. Plus, it's just really fun to use. I sanded off the tabs that keep the pieces from moving during the carves and covered the form with some Tyvek tape to keep the epoxy from sticking to the mold. The form went together really quick with some brad nails and a bead of silicone to seal all the edges. The cookies had cured and I had to sand off any excess epoxy before placing them down into the mold. Again, this mold is 52 inches by 24 inches wide, and with all those cookies numbered, I can lay them out in the proper position that I planned out earlier. If you've ever done an epoxy pour and had a piece float up on you, you know what a nightmare this can be. So I'm adding some of that Total Boat 4-minute quick drying epoxy to adhere each piece down to the mold. And spoiler alert, this worked like a charm, and I've got links for all those Total Boat products that I use down below.
And now, epoxy tips with Johnny.
All right, it's time to pour some epoxy. Now, like I said, I'm using this Total Boat Thickset Fathom epoxy. This is a 2-to-1 mix ratio. You've got an extremely long working time with this epoxy. I believe it's 2 hours of a working time, which is just crazy. You really want to make sure that you're doing it in a very climate controlled type environment, because the absolute hottest you can use this is 80 degrees. Now it is about 80 in my shop right now. I'm gonna be okay to pour in here, but as soon as I get this poured, I'm gonna wheel this into my office area, which I've got air conditioning in there. I can keep it down around 70. I'm gonna mix this up and we're gonna get to pouring. Oh man, I'm excited to try this stuff. I may not have enough to do this whole entire coffee table. We're gonna use a chisel to open this. Hold on, I've got a drill mixer. Where is my drill mixer? I can get it on there. There we go. Come on, baby. Come on. Okay. When mixing this much, it's really nice to have one of these. This is a drill mixer. 2 parts, 1 part. Let's do it. So 2 liters, 3 liters. We'll do 2 liters of part A, 1 liter of part B. Here we go. It's really important to be as precise as you possibly can, especially on something like this, because when you've got something like this, where it's pretty much one shot, one go, and if I screw this up, I'm gonna mess up the whole project. Take your time with this stuff. Get your ratio right, do everything by the book, and you'll have way better results. Hey Siri, set a timer for 3.5 minutes. That is my, whoa, I just got epoxy on my watch. All right, that's my 3-minute timer. Now again, I'm using the white Total Boat pigment dispersion, or dispersion pigment is what I always call it. This is gonna be good. Okay, I'm gonna switch the camera up. Okay, the epoxy has had 2 days to cure. This Thickset Fathom takes 5 to 10 days to fully cure. It's definitely at that gel stage. I can kind of push and kind of squish it in. If you're wondering, well, why didn't you fill it all the way up? Well, it's because I did not account properly for how much epoxy that I was gonna need. This is 3 gallons of epoxy, and I need at least another 1.5 gallons, maybe 2 gallons to finish filling up this mold. The problem is I'm out of the Thickset Fathom. So I'm gonna finish it out with just the regular Thickset and just hope it's not gonna mess this up by pouring Thickset on top of Thickset Fathom. So I can be the guinea pig and kind of show you guys if this is gonna be a total disaster or not. Okay, moving on to making the coffee table base, and I'm drawing inspiration for this mid-century modern table from a piece that Shaun Boyd made over on the Foureyes YouTube channel. Now, I'm gonna cut this out of MDF over on the CNC, and I modified that Shaun Boyd design to put my own twist on it. The table base is going to be 1.5 inches thick, so I'm going to laminate 2 layers of MDF together to make up the base. The legs and supports slot into these half-lap joints and help to hold the 2 halves together while the glue dries. I also added a bunch of these Rockler banding clamps, and I've got links for all those Rockler products that I use down below. Once the glue was dried, I could seal the edges, which I'm doing with some joint compound. Now, MDF is extremely porous, especially on the edges, so this allows that paint to go on easier. Now, speaking of paint, I'm first gonna prime the base with some Kills solvent-based primer, and you don't wanna use water-based paint on MDF because those fibers are gonna swell and ruin the whole piece. MDF is really stubborn to paint, so it's best to take your time and build up the paint job with some lighter coats. Okay, it's been 5 days of curing, and I can pull the pour out of the mold and see how it all turned out. Okay, up next, I need to cut the oval out of, we'll just call it the slab. First, before I do that, I wanna make sure everything's nice and flat. And the best way to do that is to do it while it's still as a rectangle. And I'll be using this. It's a fly cutter, it's got 2 carbide teeth. I'm gonna do a couple passes, just manually running the machine, using the keyboard settings back and forth to get some of those high spots. And once I get it kind of even, I'll run the surfacing toolpath that I have to flatten it the rest of the way. Then I'll run the toolpath to cut the oval, which is the final shape of the coffee table. I'm already loving how cool this table looks. It actually reminds me a little bit of my dog, Norman. I brought the tabletop over to my Rockler router table and cut in a heavy chamfer on the bottom. Now, during the routing, I had this piece chip out, so I'll use this scrap to try to repair it. I sanded the scrap to fit into the hole and then used the handsaw to cut that scrap into a smaller piece. Next, I adhered it in place using some wood glue and then some CA glue to hold it while that wood glue dried. Okay, back to the table base, and I'm painting it this color called 24 karat gold. It was a bit more mustardy than what I wanted, but I think this color is gonna fit this table really well and fit nicely into the room that it's going in. Between coats, I sanded the tabletop starting first with 80 grit and working my way all the way to 220 grit. Between each grit, I marked the table with some pencil lines, and once those are sanded away, I know it's time to move on to the next grit. Now I can cut away that scrap plug and then sand it flush, and it's like that tear out never even happened. I'm going back to one of my old favorite finishes, Odie's Oil, to finish this table, but I did see where Total Boat just came out with a product called Wood Honey, and I'm really excited to try it out. I think it's gonna be similar to Odie's Oil and may actually replace Odie's Oil in my shop. With that, this table was done, and I'm super happy with the way it turned out. This is one of those rare projects where I had a specific vision, and it turned out exactly as I hoped. It looks so good in our sitting room with that mid-century modern furniture and really completes the space. Plus, my wife loves it, and that's truly what matters. And see, I told you, it sort of does look like Norman. Who's a good boy? Okay, shout out to my longtime sponsor, Totalboat, and make sure to check out that new thickset Fathom epoxy, which I've got linked below. Also, thanks to Rockler for supporting my channel, and the biggest thanks of all to you, the viewer. I couldn't do this without your support, and if you're new to the channel, I hope you get subscribed to see what I'm making next. Okay, thanks for checking this one out, and I'll see you back here next time.